It's an odd juxtaposition, to be sure. Fitchburg, with its deeply depressed economy, is home to a large, robust museum. And with a new director at its helm, the Fitchburg Art Museum is rethinking itself, exploring how it can be not just a museum, but a force for change. WGBH arts editor Jared Bowen joins us now with more. So how is the museum incorporating itself into the community?
Well, it's really interesting. They have a new director in Nick Capasso, who was one of my favorite people, actually, at the Decortiva Museum and Sculpture Park. He's just a fantastic curator. And now he's taken over leadership of the Fitchburg Art Museum in a city of about 40,000 people that's very depressed. I was there a couple of years ago when we did our Where We Live series to see how downtrodden that community is. And he's looking at this museum now as a place, along with Fitchburg State University, to be an economic engine to help drive the creative economy. And I talked to him about what he wants the impact to be in the city of Fitchburg.
We're involved in creating a downtown cultural district here. We're involved in placing public art on Main Street. We're involved in creating affordable artist live-work space in the city. It's a different way to think about museums. It's thinking, you know, when you think about having a museum serve a community as opposed to the museum audience, you see the difference?
So how is this reflected in the exhibits, and how does it actually end up helping the economy? Well,
this is what I think you can see right away with what Nick Capasso has done. He's been there for about a year, and his first major show is Jeffu Warmoth, No Funny Stuff, which is a Fitchburg State University professor, also a contemporary artist who has exhibited around the world in galleries. And his pieces are built around humor, like this piece called Crawl, which are humor at the outset, I think very accessible to audiences, but once you get into him, there's this great subtext. But what he's also done, in addition to making something that's really accessible, is he's put bilingual labels up and really made this open to the community so that people can come in the doors and really enjoy art and experience it in a much different way. This is a piece, he's created a self-portrait in a supermarket. But Nick Capasso is just looking at changing the program entirely and making sure that audiences can get back in the doors.
All right. Well, I want to bring someone else into the discussion, one local community that's way ahead of the curve. John Wooding is a political science professor at UMass Lowell and chair of COOL, the cultural organization of Lowell. Welcome to Greater Boston. Welcome. So what has Lowell done that's so far ahead of what Fitchburg is already?
Well, it's ahead, but I think that's in a matter of time. I think that, in fact, Lowell was sort of getting into the creative economy before the creative economy was cool. With the establishment of the Lowell National Historical Park in the late 70s, really began that idea that a city should engage in arts and cultural development as a way of getting economic development back to a post-industrial city, which is, you know, at the time was in pretty bad shape. And I think it's been something of a lightning rod for the development of that idea. It was only in the year 2000 or so when Richard Florida wrote the book about the creative class, and I think that Lowell really then followed up with that by adopting that whole idea and developing arts and culture in Lowell as a way of building its economic foundation.
Give me an example of how that's worked.
Well, I think, for example, the Lowell Folk Festival, which is very famous, now has about 150 to 180,000 people come to it every summer. That started in the late 1980s. A few years ago, we did a Cambodian opera. First time an opera from Cambodia was done outside of Cambodia. 4,000 people attended 2-night showings of that, plus the large amount of the Cambodian population in Lowell, which is very large. And that's really great, because I think that the creative economy has to be built around diversity, the immigrant experience, ethnic minorities, and particularly youth. And it's the same when you were interviewing about Fitchburg. The idea that the art should be funny, that should be accessible, is really important, because for too long art has been something only the elite could benefit from.
Onerous.
It's something that both cities have in common is, first of all, they have great infrastructure. Fitchburg has these great old mill buildings. This is why it was prosperous. This is why you have a museum like Fitchburg, which still has a great endowment, and by the way, has a fantastic African art collection and really amazing photography collection. Just like Lowell has these great canals and great old mill buildings that have been turned into lofts. So you have the infrastructure there to make it a destination.
So that is kind of critical to it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Lowell did was really smart was in the 1990s it started to encourage artists to come to the old mill buildings, and there are now over 800 artists living and working in Lowell. In fact, the other day at the Western Avenue studio they were saying that they've run out of parking space, which is a great problem to have, right? And that, I think, has been very important for the development of Lowell and cities like it. I think it is a model that can be really well used. And I think the other part of it is that you shouldn't define art and culture too narrowly. It's about innovation and technology too, and that's a strength in Lowell, in part because of the presence of the university, in part because I think that's the right thing to do. You know?
And that's one of the things that I noticed when I was most recently in Fitchburg before this is how much the university, Fitchburg State University, is a driver. I mean, it does affect downtown when businesses can link to the university and drive people into downtown. Of course, you have this great youth population, which often is the driver of a creative economy and brings that vitality. You have the same thing in Lowell. And here the museum is also partnering with the university so that they have kids actually coming in and helping formulate the exhibits. So that they're starting to tie in. So you have two big powerhouses, which can change sort of the whole dichotomy there.
I've learned a new buzz phrase tonight. I'd never heard this. Creative economy.
You never heard this?
I'm obviously behind the curve on it, but I totally get the concept, but it's nothing that I really ever put together before.
I sort of got tired of the term.
I'm so out of it. And you're
but Richard Florida coined the term.
Who did?
Richard Florida, who wrote a book called The Rise of the Creative Class back in 2001.
Wow, I'm really
and he
out of
became the force. As people are looking around and saying, what do we do with these post-industrial cities that are collapsing? What's the new economy look like? And it's innovation and young people. And he talks a lot about the necessity of having talent, tolerance, and technology together. And I think actually the piece about tolerance, of creating an environment in the city where young people feel welcome, where minorities are welcome, where art is accessible, is as important as all the other stuff. Yeah. And I think Lowell is moving towards doing that in a very positive way. And I hope and I believe Fitchburg will do the same thing.
Great. Well, thanks. John Whitting, Jared Bowen, thank you for that.